In order to get the CPU working properly, we're going to have to add in a few extra sections. So if you get into the resources section, you can open up the file called CPU_design, come all the way down to the bottom to CPU_top_temp. So this is the one we just built up in the previous video. So I'll zoom in it just a little bit. Now the first thing to note here is that before we start any simulations, we want to make sure that all of the registers and all of the memory locations are all set to 0. So we want everything in this CPU set to 0. So we've seen previously that we can do this in the RAM section by putting in a reset pin, and we've seen that every single byte in here had a little reset pin. Now I think we can zoom in here. So we went to each of these, and each of these had a little reset pin that I put in through that OR gate. So we have a method of resetting the RAM, but we want to be able to reset all of these registers, the instruction register and address register, accumulator, everything that's got a set button. We want to be able to reset it. Now in order to do that, what we can do is we can make sure that all the sets go high inside this control section. So we've got a set pin here, a reset pin here at the control section. Now if I zoom into the control section, I've actually updated this already with the circuitry we need in order to reset, so we'll just zoom in and we can talk our way through it. So what I've done is I've added in this reset button here, and you can see in all these extra OR gates. So the reset pin comes down and goes into all the set pins here via this OR gate, and of course the other input heads into is the output of the AND gates. Okay, so that allows us to override everything that happens to all of the sets in this control section. So whenever I put that reset high, it just turns all of the sets high. So let's go back to the top level. So in order to get this working, the reset working, what we can do is we can stick a pin. So this is an input pin that's facing north, and we can connect it on there, and we can call it reset. And then we can get a tunnel, and we can connect the tunnel on, and again we can call that tunnel reset. And then we can take a copy of the tunnel and then we can connect that copy of the tunnel onto a reset pin here, get into a RAM. So if you just set it against that point there, it's actually sitting. You could put a wire like that if you wanted to. Okay, so that's now connected up. So the idea here is then if whenever this reset goes high, we should have a 0 coming out and a 0 coming into every single point in the chip, in the CPU. But how do we know we're actually going to get a 0? How do we know the first value coming onto the bus is going to be a 0? Well, we've set it up like that because if we were to go into every single connection to the bus, so all the output inputs and the registers, and also in the memory address register and the ALU, so every connection onto that bus, if we go into the actual pins and have a little look, you'll see every single pin, if I click on it, it's got behaviour pull down. So what it assumes is the bus, if the bus doesn't know what the initial value is going to be, if all these connections onto the bus are set at pull down, then it ensures that the initial value is going to be a 0. So all it really needs now then is one point or one output here or input to be connected to the bus. Now what we can do here is we can nobble it for the moment. We can just delete this one off and we can just stick a 1 in here for the moment. So we need one enable to go high. Now a 1 enable will go high whenever we go through and build the entire circuit up and go through the simulations, but to show it here we just need to connect one of these high. Okay, so we connect that high there. Okay, now whenever I go through the simulation for this, connect on simulation, whenever I connect, pulse this reset, you see instantly all of the sets have all gone high. Okay, every single set has gone high, and there's a 1 being there's a 0 being placed onto the bus. Now it doesn't matter where the 0 comes from, as long as we ensure that every single connection onto this bus is set at pull down, then initialization it can only ever be a 0. So that's how we reset the entire CPU. So now we know how we're going to reset the CPU. In the next video we'll go and we'll look at how we're going to load a program into the CPU. So that's all for this video. Thanks for listening and goodbye.